This is a split level house that we see all over the East Bay area and also in the peninsula. And this type of house almost always has balloon framing, and let me show you how that happened. So when they built this building, the first thing they did is they built the garage with the room above it. And after that, what they did is they built this floor. So this floor right here is attached to the wall that extends up here for the garage. And so when they did that, all they did is they took the floor and they nailed it to the side of the 2x4 studs that go up this way, and they never put a top plate in. And we're going to look and see exactly what that is. Right? This detail shows the difference between platform framing, which is mostly what we see in the San Francisco Bay Area. Let me show you what that looks like. So this is the upper top plate, the lower top plate. You know, that's what we see all the time. And then the plywood would come up here and it would nail into the upper top plate, and then we'd put an L90 or some kind of steel there to complete our retrofit. So this is what we normally see. However, sometimes we'll have an older house, especially like the one we just looked at, where it's a split level, where these joists will be nailed to the side of the 2x4 studs. So for example, here, let's just imagine this is the wall that's in that garage we just looked at on the left hand side, if you remember that image. So there's these 2x4s that go straight up to the ceiling, and then this 2x6, which is part of the main floor and is nailed to the wall studs. So that's the difference between balloon framing and platform framing, and this obviously is different. We're going to get ahead and take a look and see how these are retrofitted. This detail might help you understand what balloon framing is just a little bit better. So these balloon framed houses, what they would do is they would build the walls first. And so this wall, you know, it might be as much as 16 feet tall in San Francisco. They have some really good tall straight wood. So what they do is they build the wall and then they attach the floor to it. And when they did this, what they would do is they would, this ledger right here, and this ledger would be nailed, you know, to all the studs so that when they put the joists on, it would be level. So first they would level the ledger right here. Then they would put all the joists on top of that so that the floor was level. All the joists are level. Now what we see sometimes is sometimes they leave it there. And when they leave it there, we have to retrofit it in a certain way. And then sometimes they say, hey, why do we want to keep that good wood there? We can go use it for something else. And then they would remove it. So we find both. We find some where this ledger is still there, and we find some where they've removed it. And so we're going to show you now how to deal with each one of those situations. The detail on the left is FEMA P1100's method of addressing balloon framing. We see balloon framing from the 1890s to about 1915, primarily in San Francisco, but you know, we do see it everywhere in the old houses. So these normally in the old houses, so we don't do a whole lot of retrofits with balloon framing, but we do see it sometimes, and it certainly is a detail that needs to be part of P1100. Now these old houses, they were made out of 2x4s and 2x6s, and when they, sometimes 2x8s, the walls were made out of, you know, that lumber. And a 2x4 truly was a 2x4. It was 2 inches by 4 inches. A 2x6 was 2 inches by 6 inches. They didn't have nominal lumber back then. It, you know, what you bought, what you said you were getting is exactly what you're getting. So when you see a detail like this where it says put in new 2x blocking, that means you'd be using a 3.5 inch wide block, and the wall would be 4 inches, so that would leave a 1/2 inch gap there, and really doesn't perform as a fire block at all. So in order for this to work, you'd actually have to take a 2x6, which is 5.5 inches, cut off 1.5 inches, and then put the block in there. And another thing is, if you look at a house and it's 50 feet long, and you got to do this in every wall cavity, the contractor's going to go broke, and it's simply never going to happen. So I would say that that component of this detail should simply be eliminated. I'd like to show you that this detail also has a lot of moving parts. So we have this 3x block right here. Then we have this ledger right here, and then we have another block right here. So this 3x here is only attached to this block with two 3-inch screws. So with 2 3-inch screw, that's just, I believe that's just not enough screws, because if the plywood is at, say, 2 or 3 inches on center, the screw capacity isn't going to be, what it needs to be. The capacities just aren't going to match. And then you put in this block right here, and it doesn't say actually how the block is supposed to be held in place. We're going to assume that those are toenails. And then you have this connector right here to connect the two, and that is your complete load path. Now, another way to do this, which is much simpler, is you take a 2x4 and you back staple a piece of plywood. So here's your plywood, and then we're back stapling it like here to minimize any splitting. Then we take a piece of 3/4 inch plywood. We nail it to our 2x4 right here. It sits, it's in between the joists, fits real tight in between the joists, and that's it. FEMA P1100 does not have a good retrofit strategy for those circumstances where there's a ledger nailed to the sides of the stud. So here's a stud right here. There's a whole row of them, maybe 10, 15, something like that. And then this ledger right here, it's existing, it's nailed to the stud. And this is going to be a full 2x right here. So the strategy that we use is we take this 2x4 block, we back nail it here. This is the plywood right here. And then once we get that done, all we have to do is sink some nails that way, and that's it. So it's really simple. There's only 2 connections. You got your connection here, plywood to block, and then block to ledger, and that's it. Now this one is extremely similar. Here we have the exact same situation, except here we have the piece of plywood. Then we have this 2x4, which is 1.5 inches, and because it's 1.5 inches plus this 1/2 inch, we're the exact same dimensions as this old growth 2x right here, and now they're in the same plane right here, and we can just go ahead and put a piece of plywood right there, and we're all done. So this is a very good option for dealing with balloon framing.